my name is John Michael, and today I want to talk about my experience using the Hasselback by Escura to shoot Instax film in the Hasselblad camera. So if you're watching this video, you're probably either a backer of the project or thinking about getting one or interested in shooting Instax with a Hasselblad camera in general. So I want to do a little unboxing of this product, talk about how to attach it and remove it from the camera, how to shoot film with it, some potential issues where the shutter can jam open when using the back, and then go into some of the problems with focusing using this back and how to fix them. There's a lot to cover, so I'm going to try and put chapter markers in the video description so you can jump ahead if there's a specific part you're more interested in. Let's take a look at the Hasselback and how it arrives. It comes in a little cardboard box with the nice logo on the front. The pieces were individually wrapped in plastic, but I've taken those off. This little black envelope has the screen insert. You can use that to kind of see where your Instax mini frame is going to be. Put that over the viewfinder. The next thing that you'll see is a crank that is optional. And then we come to the back itself. It's got the logo kind of printed on the front. And then it's got the various attachment points. So on the bottom, there's the two hooks for the little feet on the Hasselblad. And up at the top, there's the two where it locks in. And then on the left here, you can see there's the cutouts for both the gears and the firing pin. It comes with a dark slide that you can remove. And you can see here, there's a little slot where that goes in and out. And then this is the back door. You just pull down here and you can open it up. And that's where the film goes in. Here on the bottom, you can see the little pressure plate. When you're shooting Instax Mini, you want to be sure it's all the way to the right. And if you're going to go square, then you have to slide it into the middle of the door. So I'm going to go through how to actually attach and remove the back from the Hasselblad itself. Here you can see that the camera is wound and the little firing pin is actually standing up just a little bit. When we fire the shutter, it goes up all the way and then goes to a completely flat state where it's flush with the rest of the camera. That's how it has to be if you're going to attach or remove the back. So now that the shutter pin's out of the way, you can line up the lower hooks with the back and then slide the upper hooks into the top. Once it's flush with the back, then you can slide the camera towards the winding knob, so to the right, looking down on it until it stops moving. Open up the back and make sure that it's aligned well with the back of the camera. You should be able to now wind the camera on and fire it without any issues. If you can't wind it, then maybe the gears aren't lining up with the slot very well. And if you can't fire it, or if it jams when you fire it, that means that the pin is getting caught on the edge of the little cutout where the pin goes. I had this issue and I actually filed down the sides of the gear and the pin slots on the back. I've had two other situations where the shutter will jam open. One is if the little hook that ejects the film, if that is in the up position, then it'll cause some friction on the firing pin and prevent it from closing. Or if the dark slide is in place and you fire the shutter, it will lock open. Just remove the dark slide if this happens and it should pop out. If the hook's up and you jam the shutter, you're going to have to open the back, take out the film pack, and push the little hook down or wind it until it goes down, and that should clear the shutter jam as well. Once the back is attached properly, then you can go ahead and insert your film pack or remove the dark slide, assuming you already had one in, and you can just go ahead and fire the shutter normally. Now, when you're winding the crank, some people have had issues where if you do a stop and a start motion, you'll get uneven development on the print. To avoid that, you can either install the crank that they included, or what I like to do is kind of hand-over-hand motion on the normal crank so that it's continuously moving and doesn't have this start and stop action. So to remove the back, be sure you fire the shutter. Then you can insert the dark slide if you want to. Slide the camera to the left, looking down, and then you can just pull it off away from the back. So once I had figured all that out and got my back attached and film loaded, I was eager to take a picture, so I put a camera on my bench, lined it all up, focused, and fired it off. Waited a few minutes for it to develop, and got this. As you can see, it is nowhere near in focus. I tried a few more shots, and by the end of the 10-shot pack, I was able to kind of get some focus just by trial and error. Now granted, I was doing this at f2.8, and if I had stopped down to f8 or f16, then it would have been much easier to get something in focus. But I'm doing all of this focus testing at f2.8, because if you can get good focus at the maximum aperture, then stopping down will only make things better. So let's take a look at why this is happening, and then we can see about how to fix it or work around the problem. If we think about how light travels, it's going to enter the lens and then reflect off of the mirror, and it's going to go up from the mirror then to the focusing screen, which is located here. Now there's a certain distance from the back of the lens to the mirror and then up to the focusing screen. That distance has to be the same distance from the back of the lens to the film plane. And you can even see on the back, there's this little symbol here where the film plane is. So now if we compare the two backs, you can see that the film sits very close to the back here. It's just a little bit down. And on the other back, there's quite a difference. So we can even measure that, and measuring from the plane to where the film goes, on the original back, it is about 3.5 millimeters. And then if we do the same measurement from the back down to the film plane on the Instax back, it's about 7 millimeters. So there's a difference of 3.5 millimeters or so between the film plane on a film back and the film plane in the Instax back. Now 3.5 millimeters might not sound like a whole lot, but if you're talking about distances behind the rear element of the lens, then it's very precise, and 3.5 millimeters is quite a lot. So that's why the focus doesn't match when you're looking at the focusing screen and when you get your actual image. Now this isn't news to the makers of this back, and in their original design they were supposed to include an adapter that would raise the focusing screen in the camera up to compensate for this difference. I was really curious about this decision, so I reached out to Escura and asked them about it. They got back to me, and the original Hasselback portrait had a 17.5 millimeter distance. When they did the redesign, they were actually able to get it down to 4 millimeters, which is pretty close to the original back. In addition to this, they were able to adjust the design so that you can shoot both Instax Mini or Instax Square in the same back, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, when they actually went to mass produce the back, they had to then increase the distance again to about 5.5. If you're asking yourself, what's with all these numbers? Why can't you just put the film plane where the original one is? Well, if you take a look at the back of the Hasselblad, the little hooks actually get in the way of the film cartridge, and that's as close as it can really get. The only way to get it any closer would be to rotate the back so that the film would eject on the left of the camera, but that would mean losing the really classic orientation with the white bar on the bottom of the image. So as you can see, there's a lot of variation in the different distances between the different versions of the backs. They were planning on including an adapter when the back still had the 17.5 millimeter difference. When they got it down to 4 millimeters and did their testing, they were testing it at f8 or f22, and then they weren't noticing any shifts in focus. Of course, the first thing that I did was to test it at wide open. I still think it would have been great if they had included a spacer, or at least talked about the issue and included some more information on how to deal with it. But this is the back we've got to work with, so let's see how we can get some good focus with it. So to help figure out where the focus is actually sitting, I made this ground glass for an Instax cartridge. If you put this in the Hasselback with the door open and the camera on bulb mode, then you'll be seeing the actual image on the ground glass, and you can use it for focusing and composing, just like you would a large format camera. If you're going to be taking pictures of something that's not moving, this might be enough. Then you can just take the ground glass out, put in your Instax pack, and away you go. However, if you want to take different pictures of things at different distances, this is going to be a bit limiting. So the next option is to use a measuring tape. Now, in the original Hasselback portrait project, one of the stretch goals was a little focusing card with the relevant focusing information. Again, this wasn't included in the actual project, but we can do the same thing on our own. I made a table of all the relevant distances that are marked on the lens and wrote down the actual focus distance. All of these distances are measured from where the back meets the back of the camera itself. I'll add a link in the description to the video where you can see the table and print it out as a PDF. Now, the most practical option is to have a focusing screen that is actually calibrated to give you the correct focus when you look through the viewfinder. And for that, what you need to do is think about that 3.5 millimeters that we measured earlier, and we need to lift up the focusing screen by that amount. So then the distance from the lens to the focusing screen will match the distance from the lens to the film back. Now, of course, you need to have a removable screen to do this, so if you've got one of the earlier models, then you're going to have to use one of the first two methods. But if you can remove your screen, this is a great way to be able to get sharp photos just by focusing as you normally would. I've used brass to make a little frame that the focusing screen can sit on, and that raises it up just enough to get a good focus. It wasn't quite perfect, so I've added some little card paper bumpers, and that gives me a pretty accurate focus. Making the little riser that goes under the focusing screen can be made out of just about anything. My proof of concept was just with a piece of cardstock that was kind of bent around to make a frame. You could 3D print it if you have access to that sort of thing. I would definitely recommend checking it against your ground glass and take some test shots just to be sure that the focus is actually sitting where it's supposed to before you go out and depend on your riser. There are also 4 little brass posts underneath the focusing screen in the Hasselblad, so if it sits on the posts, it's going to have a slightly different height than if it sits underneath the posts on the bottom, so be aware of that. Of course, with all of these methods, if you stop down a bit, you're going to get a deeper depth of field, but I went through everything at wide open just to get the most accurate focus I possibly could. One last word about focus. I didn't spend a whole lot of time looking for infinity focus, but when I checked it with my lens, it's 185 centimeters. That's with the 80mm lens. And you're going to have to stop down quite a bit if you want to get anything in focus out beyond 2 meters. That makes this back really only good for close-ups and portraits. So my final thoughts. Yes, you can use this back. You can get images. You can get square or Instax mini images out of it. You're going to have to do some sort of adjustment or adapting to get good focus using the focusing screen. And the overall build quality is not quite what I had expected. In the original Kickstarter and the things that they were saying in between, it seemed like it was going to be a bit higher quality. It feels a bit boxy and a bit like a beta unit. I know a lot of people were really upset with how long the project took. That didn't bother me too much. I'm happy that I finally got one and that it works out okay. I think the biggest thing that they could have done differently was to be better about communicating with their backers and keeping in touch as to what was going on throughout the whole process. I've had a couple of email exchanges with them, and they always got back to me. Sometimes it took a while. When I was making this video, it went very quickly, and they were happy to send me these images. If they had shown that level of responsiveness and communication with the community of backers, I think they would have a lot more goodwill. Also, in the time it took for this project to actually get finished, several other companies have come out with competing products that seem to be similar quality or maybe even better. I don't have any experience with them, but there are at least 3 that I know of that seem to be comparable. For me, I'm really looking forward to using this on a shoot and seeing how it works with an actual model, and I think that it'll work for my needs. It was $199 for me 3 years ago, which is a good price for what I want to use it for. If you're going to use Instax professionally or use the back quite often, you might want to take a look at some of the other products on the market now. They have motor-driven film ejection as well as other solutions for dealing with the focus. They cost a bit more, but it's worth looking into. I'm quite happy with this back for now, and I'm definitely going to play with it quite a bit, see what I can do with it. Thanks for watching, and I hope this is helpful, especially to the backers. If you're getting your back and having trouble with it, maybe this will help you out. And if you're thinking about getting one, maybe this will help with your decision a bit. If I messed up on anything, please let me know in the comments. There'll also be a link to my website, and I'll try and post some more information like the focusing table and that sort of thing. Now stop watching YouTube and go out and take some pictures.